Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my gongaristic co-host, Chris Rasick. Today, we are glad to have Dillon Carter back on the show. He's a friend of the pod, co-founder and COO of the Aura Repricer, and a former Amazon seller himself. Today, we're going to be talking about repricing. We're going to dive into AI, of course, talk about the state of selling on Amazon in 2026. Dillon's been on the show multiple times, and every single time he drops some knowledge that moves the needle for sellers. I would imagine this time will be no different because his engine revs just a little bit higher than ours. Now, before we dive in, you guys know the drill. It takes us minutes to prepare for each one of these episodes. So if you take something away from this podcast, do us a solid, leave us a review, drop a comment, let us know. Those digital high fives make us want to come back and keep doing more interviews and bring you the education you need as an Amazon seller. All right, Dillon, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate
it. Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me back on. I'm always so jacked up after our conversations that I'm reeling for 3 days straight. So I'm pumped to do this again.
I appreciate that. I don't know. Hopefully that's a good thing. But for those who are tuning in for the first time, can you give us like the 2-minute rundown of who you are and what you do?
Yes. Dillon Carter, co-founder at Aura, so goaura.com. Started doing RA 12 to 15 years ago at some point, somewhere in that ball range. Was a full-time personal trainer, wanted something more scalable, went into RA because I heard about it on a podcast like most of us do. Decided to go back to college full-time to get my finance degree. Did not have time to do RA anymore. OA was not really a thing like it is today. It was way more difficult, or I just couldn't wrap my head around it. Very possible. Then went into wholesale, which there's a lot of assumptions built around it, a lot of myths around it. So I just dove head straight into that. We ended up launching one of the first wholesale focused Facebook groups, did live sourcing every Tuesday for 2.5 years straight. First wholesale focused podcast that is still up and somehow still getting downloads, which is awesome. And then pivoted over into software. So my co-founder, James, was a computer science major at the time I was getting my degree. We met Instagram and just started working together remotely for 1.5 years before meeting in person. And we initially started with building software for us. We did wholesale. That's what we knew. So we're like, what if we had a CRM focused for Amazon wholesale sellers? It was fun, learned a ton, not the biggest market at the time. Did everything wrong you could imagine because first time doing anything, you're going to make mistakes. But we found a passion for building software and building companies and stuff like that. And so we pivoted over into our most painful experience as sellers, which was using repricing software. It felt either totally distant in the sense that I didn't know what would happen if I made a certain setting change, which was like scary, right? I was legitimately overwhelmed and afraid to use a repricing software because I have heard horror stories. We've heard about customer support teams being outsourced, which an advisor told us to do, and we gratefully did not do that. And so we kind of looked at the market and we said, could we build something better and operate it differently based on what we know we needed as sellers? And so that's what we did. We built Aura and we've been growing that ever since. I think it's been 8 or 9 years at this point.
Nice. Yeah, I can't believe, man, we've been in this game for a long time.
I think I can officially qualify as an OG because now I'm getting older, but I've spent 1/3 of my life in the Amazon space, either as a seller or on the software side. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy.
It's nuts. Last time you were on, and every time maybe, we talked about like Maven and Hyperdrive.
Yeah.
Maven is, of course, Aura's AI repricer. Hyperdrive allows you to bypass Amazon's speed limit on repricing. Yes. Do you guys have anything new that's come out or changed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's evolving. And when we first launched it, the big demand was, I don't want to do anything. I want you to do it all. Okay. That's hard to do because everybody's different. So we strategically built it in such a way that it was as hands-off as possible. All you're setting is mins and maxes, really just mins. That's kind of it. As AI has become more prevalent and people have become more comfortable with it, there's this shift towards this hybrid approach where, yes, utilize Maven's logic, let it make its own decisions with some guardrails. So we introduced two specific things. The first one was aggression levels. So now, because we had so many sellers, loved Maven, they're like, I'm getting sales above the buy box. This is fantastic. Margins are improving. Sometimes I don't want it to focus there. I actually want it to get me more buy box, be more aggressive. So we introduced a slider, right? So there's these breakpoints. Point one, very conservative. Like it's maximizing sales as much as it can, and it's testing higher prices. Point nine and above, complete opposite. It's trying to win the buy box as much as it can in a strategic way. And so now that was the first thing that we introduced that allowed our users to have a little bit more say in what Maven does. So Maven's still doing its own thing, but you're shifting Maven in a direction. You're saying, hey, go this way instead of this other way. And then we had a lot of sellers, a lot of big sellers say, hey, I love that Maven's testing prices, but I know my inventory really, and I know what works based on timing for raising prices. Okay, so we took a look at the data. It's true. So we did actually input a manually set yo-yo configuration in the advanced section for Maven as well. So what's interesting is now you can say, I know I can raise my prices to my max every 3 hours for 20 minutes, and it works for me because I know my inventory. I'm that dialed in. Outside of that timeline, I actually want you to be really aggressive or maybe less aggressive. So now we're getting into this, like I was saying, hybrid approach where you're letting Maven do its own thing by giving it direction, but you're also superseding it when it makes sense. So for new, smaller sellers, they're not going to do that. I don't think they should because they don't have enough experience to know, is it 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 2 hours? I have large sellers that will price spike every 2 minutes, only on certain listings because they know on that listing, it works for whatever reason. So I'm going to utilize it. So now we're shifting into that world, right? And this is a big change, I think, in terms of what sellers are expecting from software, which is, again, we went from it's all manual, we just help you do it a little faster and more streamlined, to everybody just wanted AI and just do it for me, to there's some nuances here. And yes, there are some nuances there. And that's something we wanted to do. But everybody we talked to in the early days of Maven, when we launched 1.0, was like, no, just do it all. Okay, we're going to give you what you want, which went incredibly well and continues to. But now there's this sophistication that's starting to come up where people are playing with tools like ChatGPT and understanding like, oh, if I communicate slightly differently, I get a better result. Therefore, there is this kind of pseudo configuration concept. And so a lot of sellers are getting used to that, comfortable with that concept, and they're wanting to apply that in a lot of different ways. So I think that's the big thing there, right? Then we added additional costs because went to a conference and everybody was like, I need additional costs. I was like, perfect. So that's an easy one to add in, right? And a lot of the things we're looking at right now is allowing the user to have more control, but also more granular details on the cost side. 2025 was weird. We can all agree on that, right? A lot of things changed. And the Marketplace Pulse report came out for Amazon in 2025. And it pretty much was like, here's exactly what happened. I was like, yep, all checks out. Operational efficiency, excellency, all that stuff matters more than it ever has. Personally, I don't think that's a bad thing. And we can talk about that because us developers are also dealing with that right now. But gone are the days where you can fly by the seat of your pants and make some money. Now you got to be dialed in. And so as we see more demand for that, that's where we're leaning in on the product side.
Okay. This makes me want to dive into a couple of different questions.
Yeah.
So one, I know some people, everyone wants to use AI in some way.
Yes.
But one thing I want people to understand is, what is the underlying principles of Maven, for example? Is it game theory? Is it something else? And how can they understand that without, of course, you just pulling back the code and show?
For sure. Yes. So we do utilize game theory. Game theory, we're talking AI as a subject matter. It's incredibly broad. Frustratingly, because now when people say AI, they immediately think ChatGPT, stuff like that. That is AI. That is large language models. So we don't use that because one, it's incredibly expensive, not fast enough, and we're doing text, right? Like, we can generate images, but I'm not generating price updates here. There's machine learning, things like that. Machine learning is looking at a bunch of data extrapolating patterns using machine learning algorithms to then say, here's how you make decisions based on what has worked. That's really nice for things like private label price optimization. Very different, right? Because you're looking at just your data and you're saying what works here. And we're going to extrapolate that forward. With repricing, that doesn't really work because the market's changing too fast. New competitors are coming on. What was true yesterday is no longer true today. So you can't take a backlog of 3 to 6 months of data and then say, here's what we should do. No, that's already out of date. It doesn't work. For us, what we do is some key important things. We utilize game theory to understand and profile the competitors on a listing. And this is important. We've all been on listings where people compete in a healthy way. And then we've all been on listings where there's one person who, no matter what, is dropping their price. Okay. When I was a seller, we did not have this kind of technology. So you just had to deal with it and it sucked. And there were strategies, drop them down, let them sell out, rebound, whatever. It was all manual. With game theory, though, it allows you to bucket sellers into one of two camps, cooperative or uncooperative. Cooperative, all that means is they're playing fair with me, right? All that means basically is they're matching my price, right? Uncooperative means they are trying to beat my price. They are trying to aggressively attack my position, if you will. There are different strategies that work depending on which competitor I'm going against and their profile. So if us three are playing a turntable game and I know that one of you is always going to play fair, the other one's not going to play fair. Depending on our rotation, I'm going to change my strategy. Just makes sense, right? Because if you're matching me and I start repricing below you, I can trigger something, which is price tanking, right? If you're matching me and I'm matching you, and no matter what I do, you always match me, then I can technically raise the price and you're just going to match me as well. So what we're doing is we're essentially reverse engineering what your competitors are doing behaviorally and then utilizing that as inputs to say, what should we do here? Should we raise the price? Should we drop it short term? Should we hold it steady? And this is a vast difference between rule-based strategies, which are very rigid, right? They sometimes totally make sense. That's why we have not gotten rid of them. They can make a lot of sense. So if we know what is true, and by the way, behaviors of your competitors will change. You might match me today. 3 weeks from now, you want to liquidate the inventory. Now you're not matching me. So my behavior also needs to change as your behavior is changing, right? So we're intentionally forgetting what we know about competition to relearn it to say, is that still true? You don't want to consistently make that assumption. So if we know what's true, we also need to know, where do we want to go? What's the goal? Because if I just know what's true, but you don't tell me, here's what I want you to achieve, then I can't make an intelligent decision. So what we do is we calculate the optimal price. That's what we call it. We're factoring in a lot of variables and we're trying to figure out, where should that price realistically be and get you there. And what we found with our equation is it is typically above the buy box, which makes sense economically, right? If there's a lot of competition, you're going to have downward pressure on the price. So that's not really ideal. Basic supply and demand concept. So if we know where we want to get to that optimal price, and let's say it's 20% higher than where we're all competing on, I can now say, okay, I know where I want to go. I know how everybody's reacting. What strategic price update should I make to close that gap? And that's what we're doing. So the game theory part is understanding the competitors. The optimal price is just basic equations, right? We're calculating this. We tweak it as we go, as we learn things to really dial it in. And then we're saying, okay, that's your input, Maven. You decide what needs to happen now. And it's not a one-off thing. You really want to be thinking in terms of second order effects. So you might see Maven lower the price, be like, oh, that's horrible. Actually not, because I pulled the buy box and then I popped it back up. So if you watch it long enough, you'll see it do that kind of interesting behavior. And so it's getting away from this very rigid, if this happens, then do that, and more of this dynamic model of what is happening right this minute and what am I trying to achieve and what do we need to do to achieve our stated goal. And we're doing that in real time. So your optimal price is fluctuating all the time. You never see it. It's behind the scenes. Just like your dynamic max price that we're setting is dynamically shifting in real time. And so things can fluctuate quite a bit. It could even be the fact that your competition's not changing prices, but the BSR doubled. So naturally demand is going to be much lower. Basic economics would tell you your price should be slightly lower to keep demand going. Okay, let's take a look at that as well. So it's factoring in things like BSR, ranks, stuff like that to understand not just the competition landscape, what is the landscape of this listing right now? And so we've tested Maven on a listing where we're the only seller and it's actually fluctuating at the optimal price. You can watch the actual optimal price shift around. We had an example where we started at 65 where we listed, we started to get sales. It jumped up to 120, got like one sale, but it really pulled back the rank too hard. So it brought it back down to 95 and it found that was the sweet spot. And then what's funny is another seller jumped on the listing, but they jumped on at 95, not 65. And so behind the scenes, a lot is happening. But as a seller, all you really need to understand is that we are studying your competition to understand what they do as a response to what we do. Where do we want to go? And then close that gap.
Now, and I don't know if you're able to get this granular or not, but
Sure.
we know that you talked about operational efficiency, and
Yeah.
we know that Amazon is really moving that direction. That's one of the reasons they introduced their flywheel approach to distribution.
Yep.
And we know that, or at least we're able to infer that inventory placement matters because there are regional buy boxes. Are you able, or does Amazon give you enough data to know, you know what, in Albuquerque, I can price that inventory, or I can try to get the buy box at $32.99, but in New York, I've got to be at $31.72.
Yeah.
Are you able to get that granular?
Not to that degree. We can see in the API multiple sellers that are tagged as in the buy box, which tells us regional buy boxes. They don't tell us what region, which is really frustrating. The difficulty I have with some repricing software saying we're introducing regional buy boxes. The issue I have with it is you only have one price. So if you're optimizing for one region, you are de-optimizing for every other region. So I don't love the concept because now there's no clear win. It's really a trade-off. And that's a hard trade-off to make, in my opinion. It's actually very complicated to do that correctly. What I have seen work really is you're still competing for the global buy box, but you're intentionally distributing your inventory in those regions, which means you will still be getting buy boxes. So it's less of, if we were talking Shopify as an example, where you can say, okay, if somebody's shopping from that region, show them a different price than what is being shown globally versus this other region, I would say absolutely. Because to do regional buy boxes correctly, you need to be able to understand when do you prioritize one region over another or the others. Ideally, it's based on sales and profit margin. So if the system sees, okay, I'm getting a lot of sales in that region, you have inventory there, the profit margin, all that equation equals out to be a priority, then yes, you can do that. But again, you're still deprioritizing the others, which is not ideal. So can you do it? Yes. Can you do it in a way that meaningfully moves the needle? I've yet to see anybody actually do it, if that makes sense. It's such a great concept. And I'm really hoping Amazon introduces something like this where we can have multiple prices based on region. The moment they allow us to have multiple prices, so we're not deprioritizing other regions, yes, that's going to be fantastic. I've yet to see it.
Yeah. Okay. I've got two more things, and we'll move on to the next question. But
Sure.
so one of the things that I notice quite a bit in the seller community is everyone focuses on profit per sale.
Yeah.
And if I buy 10 units, I know that I want to make $5 profit per unit per sale. And that's where the focus is. And I'm working on a post about this. But so I had some sales recently where, I don't know, 20, 30 units. And some sales are at, say, $28.99, which is profitable.
Yep.
Other sales are at 42. Some sales are at 36. And to me, I'm completely happy with this.
Yeah.
I know that I'm profitable across the range, and those higher sales are bringing my average profit for that SKU up. How do we teach that to other Amazon sellers to realize that is okay, that is normal? And if I'm making $3 in profit on one sale, it's not necessarily a bad thing because my average profit is going to be X.
Yeah. This is a false optimization strategy. What I mean by that is most sellers will behave and think exactly the way you just described, which is, oh, I got to sell at 3 instead of 5. I lost money. I've heard that a lot. You didn't lose money because you got a sale. If you did not get a sale, then you did not get a sale. Like, you didn't lose anything and you were profitable. Trust me, you made money. You didn't make as much as you wanted or expected. That happens. When you talk to sellers doing I know a seller doing about 4 to 5 mil a month OA. Insane. No idea. Like insane. They're not looking at every single unit. You can't. It is physically impossible. And you can't optimize every single unit. Now, if you're doing private label, yes, you could do that. Right? You could just change your price and that is the price. But when you're talking market dynamics, things will shift. Look at industries where there's an actual market, right? If you look at like precious metals, stocks, whatever, do you wish you had bought it at the very bottom and sold it at the very top? Of course, but you didn't and you couldn't, and you can't go back. Does that negate the 300% ROI you got? Not even remotely. People that operate at a higher scale are looking at averages. This is the thing that when I was a seller doing wholesale that fundamentally shifted me up in terms of cash flow and my scale. I was looking at what is the average net profit I'm getting? What is the average sale price? What's that relationship? And so when I got a new wholesale account, I would sort, right? What's my lowest ROI item? Not based on what I bought, what I actually sold it at. Market doesn't care what you paid. Markets could care less about you. And I would replace that if what I was looking to purchase was a higher theoretical ROI. I would test it and then come back and say, okay, based on actual sales, what was it, right? Am I replacing a 10% ROI, my bottom item, with something that actually is selling at 15% ROI? Cool. I'm making that trade. So sometimes it's not about shifting prices up. You do that as much as you can, 1000%. Sometimes it is understanding better sourcing. I said something on X, I think it was last week, that sellers need to understand you make your money when you buy inventory, not when you sell it. You are buying your margin. Every seller I talk to, I'm like, what's your buy requirement for margin or ROI? They go 60%. Okay. Pull up your data. What do you actually sell it at? And it's always lower. Okay. You can hate that concept. That's totally fine. I did too. But if you can accept it, you can then say, okay, if I want to improve that, I need to buy better. I need to buy higher margins, right? So if I want my actual sales margin to go up 20%, I need to buy 20% better, right? It is a behavioral thing. This is why I am so bullish on sellers consuming content outside of the Amazon reseller space. There's amazing quality here. Don't get me wrong. You need to go look at examples of other industries and how they operate and how they think, and then bring in those principles, and you will perform dramatically better. And I think you will stand out in a crowd that is operating as if those principles have never existed. We're trying to recreate the wheel here. We don't have to. If you boil down a lot to what sellers do, it's the same core concepts and skill sets that have existed in other industries for hundreds of years. They figured out a lot over that period of time. There's plenty of books and stuff on that. You just have to not hear them talk about trading or sales or whatever specifically and understand, oh, that's the same thing I'm actually doing. We just call it something different because we love creating names in the Amazon space, right? We love doing it. But really, that concept has existed. It has a much boring name and it works incredibly well. That's what I loved doing when I was a seller. I realized wholesale is not a skill. It's not. It's just how you purchase your inventory. The skill was sales when you boiled it down. You're cold calling brands, opening up accounts, dealing with objections. So I learned and studied sales, and then that made wholesale better. But nobody at the time, and I still don't hear it as much. I hear a little bit more these days talking about, no, you need to understand how to like cold call, open up accounts and blah, blah, blah. It's no, I'm teaching you wholesale, but you're not. Like wholesale is not a skill. Like wholesale is an umbrella term for how you purchase inventory. And it is a collection of specific skills like forecasting, inventory management, maybe PPC, so paid acquisition and sales, and relationship management, for, of course. When you get to that world, your mindset starts to shift. And I think there's this narrowing approach with new sellers, right? It's listen, when you become a seller for the first time, you are drinking from a fire hose on everything. So I understand why it happens, but you have to pause and you have to say, where can I go get inspiration from? Where can I go get insights from that comes from a more mature, longer lasting industry that would set me apart and help me understand this from a different perspective and speak a different language? Because we're all speaking on the same things, just different languages, but it's the same concepts, which is so interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to your wholesale point, I've had this idea for several years. Someone needs to run like a wholesale boiler room.
Yes.
and invite people who want to do wholesale in.
Yeah,
And we used to do this when I was in sales. I
of course.
would take a course on handling objections or take a course on phone sales, and we'd literally have to get up in front of the
Yep.
class and then open the phone book and dial for dollars.
Yep.
The most nerve-wracking exercise I've ever done, like literal
Mhm.
sweat and bullets in front of people.
100%.
One of the most useful exercises. No, did not matter after about an hour of doing that. I was Teflon.
Yep.
Okay. One last thing. You said we talked about operational efficiency. We know that's where
Mhm.
Amazon is going. We've
Yep.
seen them just recently get rid of 16,000 middle management bloat. Know that they've got the flywheel approach to distribution. They're giving UPS the boot, or UPS is giving them the boot. They're working on giving USPS the boot, and they're handling all these things internally. And you said there, new sellers need to be dialed in,
Yeah.
and that's what is going to win the game. Now, I want you to speak on how do sellers who are juggling a family, a 9 to 5, and they're looking for some way. Maybe it's a way out, maybe it's just an extra $1,000 a month. How do they handle being dialed in on a business like this where you can't just be a flipper anymore
Yeah.
and you need to run not a side hustle, but a side business?
That is the key point. This is no longer something that you can make a bunch of mistakes and get away with it. And so sellers naturally go, it's dying. Actually, it's not. If you look at the GMV growth for Amazon for third party sellers, it is consistently growing year over year. If you are looking at the total number of sellers over X dollars, it is going up, but total sellers is going down. So we're having this consolidation moment. So it's not that it's going away, it is changing. And we've always talked about this, right? Every year it's changing in some way, shape, or form. It's just that for the first time, Amazon really leaned into that and put things in place that forced it. They told you it was happening, right? Like they gave you the forewarning, but now they're like, no, but seriously, if you don't operate at this level, you can't be here. Or it's just going to be dramatically harder and it's just not going to make sense. So while a lot of people really disliked 2025, understandably, it was very uncomfortable. If you survived it and you understood what Amazon was trying to get you to do, I think it's actually going to be a better opportunity because there's less competition and the competition that is still there, even the newer ones are having to operate in a way that's not shady, to be honest. Like there's some that listen, this is Amazon, that happens, right? But yes, first and foremost, like it's not one or two things, right? It is really mindset. This is not eBay where you just buy stuff, flip it, and move on. This is a real business here. You need real systems and processes. You need documentation. You need a lot. Let me put it this way. You need to be intentional and you need to care about the details. That's fundamentally what it comes down to. And that those two things apply across the board. How you source, how you sell, how you deal with IPI stuff. Like all of it matters now. And the beautiful part, as much as nobody likes it, is they tell you what to fix and what to do, right? They're like, we're giving you the blueprint. You just have to be willing to do it. And is it more work? Of course it is. But you guys have heard me say this for years. You need to be building a company, not a business. What's the fundamental difference between those two things? It comes down to how you operate. Every business is a company, every company is a business, but philosophically, mentally, they are approached very differently. A business to me is kind of lackadaisical, right? Things aren't really dialed in. They don't really have systems. They don't really have documentation. They're not really organized. To get anything done is kind of like pulling teeth because nobody wants to do it, right? That's lifestyle. I get it. Building a company is more difficult in the sense that you got to care about things you don't care about. I'll be honest. There's things that we have to do, even as developers. We're like, man, like this, I just don't care. It doesn't impact anything. But you know what? You got to do it. So get it done. So gone are the days of, I'm just not going to care about that. In are the days of, you better care about it because there's actually negative consequences here. So I don't like books and content that are geared towards go make money. Every business is trying to make money. So like that being its own little niche subject matter is interesting to me. I think sellers need to be reading books based on building startups, building companies that scale. Not that you have to want to get to that level of the author, but you are peeking in to see behind the curtains to understand how they're making decisions, how they're going about operating, what behaviors they utilize. And you're taking those same principles and you're applying it to yours. Again, they're just as applicable to somebody doing 10,000 a month as somebody doing 10 million plus a year. They're slightly different. Of course, there's some things you don't need to do at that point, but the core foundations, the patterns there do matter. And this is the thing I learned. Like, I had businesses and then we started Aura and we built a company. And there was a lot of stuff. Even to this day, I'm like, I wish we didn't have to do this. This is so boring or like non-consequential. It doesn't matter. You have to do it. Like, things have to be dialed in. And you're making decisions on letting go your CPA because they just don't get your world and finding a better one. And that takes time. You're like, yeah, but I'm not working on something more fun. Sure. Welcome to company building, but it does matter. And so even if you're working full time and you're starting this on the side, this, what I'm saying does not mean you cannot do that. Don't hear me say that. It just means that you have to approach it more seriously. You have to care about the details. You have to think a little bit more strategically. You have to understand the rules of the game that you're playing because they have changed. Now, I think for new sellers coming in that are willing to learn and understand those things, they are better off than somebody who has been a seller, not fully full time, or they haven't really scaled up and they're having to change. Change is uncomfortable when you've been operating one type of way forever and then something flips and you go, that sucks. I don't want to do that. Do you want to be in business or out of business? Because Amazon's not special. Our industry is not special. Every industry has shifts. They have foundational things, whether that's regulations, whatever. Markets shift. And adaptability is the biggest thing. That's why you guys heard me say my theme for 2025 was adaptability. You're going to have to. And listen, you can say, I don't want to, that fine, right? Totally up to you. But for those who care, who want to still be here, who want to build something substantial, I think this is the best opportunity you've ever had as a seller. I've been itching to get back into it because of what's changing. That sounds counterintuitive to everybody else's communication on the subject. I'm like, no, I don't think you understand what just happened. They just try to professionalize our industry. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. They're holding sellers to a higher standard. It's uncomfortable. Nobody wants it, but think about how your competition changes. Think about how that second order effect applies to things like net margins, to the prices you can now test higher that you previously couldn't because you had so many sellers on it. Operating non-strategically is the term I'm going to use, but stupidly. Let's be frank, right? So I think no matter what company or type of industry you're in, you're always starting small. You're always less serious, less dialed in than somebody who's been doing it for 5, 10 years. But you look at those who have been and you say, how are they operating differently than how I naturally want to? Because the blueprint is there. And most of the time, it's fairly obvious if you watch and pay attention to what they do, not what they say. And so, how do you do it? It's not a mechanical thing. I think fundamentally, you go and you understand what the game is today. You get clarity on that and you build your operations, you build your company with those incentives in mind and you crush it. That's fundamentally what it comes down to.
If I can maybe make this a little understandable for those in Ann Arbor, essentially what you're saying is it's no longer selling on Amazon's no longer wearing pajama pants. It's wearing a Patagonia vest.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Gotcha.
fundamentally it. I've always said we are a young industry. I know what we do is not young as a concept, but this industry is relatively young. And I've been saying for the past decade plus, it will continue to mature. So mature with it or don't. Adapt or die is how it comes down, man. When private label first became a thing, you could do all kinds of stuff and make crazy money. And then that changed and people said, oh, it died. No, it just changed. There's still people building amazing brands and doing incredible things. It's just different. And fun fact, it's not as easy now. I think that's a good thing. I don't want a ton of competition in the sense that it forces me to compete in a unhealthy way. I love competition. I like when it's done well. There's nothing wrong with competition, but I would rather compete with people who take it as seriously as I do and don't make bad decisions than with a larger group of people who are just not thinking things through and they're ruining it for everyone else. So I think we're about to have a resurgence for selling, in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing either. Yeah. When I dabbled into private label, it was too easy and I
Which
didn't
is
know
great.
any better. Yeah. And I didn't know any better. And I did some things that like literally could have been dangerous for the end consumer
Yeah.
because I did not know. Yeah. Yeah.
So just take it serious. That's it.
Yeah, it's interesting that maybe it's an oversimplification, but I think you can see the dividing line between the people that didn't adapt,
Yeah.
and the people that are adapting based on attitudes on social media. Even
100%.
there's a whole lot of people bemoaning, "Oh, I've been selling for 5, 8 years or whatever, and it's just gone down the tubes." And
But then you
like,
can
okay,
point two other sellers that say the exact opposite because they operate differently. I'll be like, this is awesome. We grew 40% last year without hardly doing anything different. It's because you were already operating based on what Amazon wanted you to do before the changes went into effect. So it didn't affect you. So yeah, if you wait for the forcing function, it's going to suck. If you get ahead of the curve, all right, it is what it is.
Yeah. It's like I want to start a dog walking business and thinking that it only entails walking dogs. But two people start one and one realizes that there's customer acquisition, there's management, relationship management and all that stuff. So
100%.
yeah, it's interesting. Hot take as far as being bullish on new sellers and the opportunity that
I know
right now like that might get clipped and make the rounds on social media. Speaking of starter plans and then tying into the game theory that we talked about before, I don't know how, especially a new seller listens to you talk about everything that Maven has baked into it and doesn't get interested. So you guys have a starter plan, very friendly, new seller friendly starter plan. Can you tell us a little bit about the information that you're seeing on the back end about how newer sellers, specifically how they perform when they get access to something like AI repricing earlier in their journey? Like what kind of difference does it make getting that kind of tech early on?
It makes all the difference. Most new sellers that are not utilizing this, even if they're using a basic repricing software, they find that they run out of capital very quickly. So a lot of sellers are getting started with less than $1,000 in capital. You can spend that relatively fast, right? Even if you take some time, but you're not selling through things, that capital dwindles and then you're just twiddling thumbs, right? When we get somebody on the sooner side, they start to see what's possible on the pricing. They start to understand, oh, I can price higher. I don't have to massively decrease the price to get things to move. That's the natural behavior. If you don't know, you're first coming into this, you go, I'm not getting a ton of sales, so I'm just going to lower my price. They don't lower it by a penny. They don't just match. They go, I'm going to beat you by a lot. Because at that point, it's very small scale, very low volume of SKUs. You can get away with that for a little bit. It's not how you build a business, but you can do it. So when they see what's possible, they tend to want to spend a lot more on inventory. It's a nice motivational thing where they're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to sell it at 60. I sold it at 68. I want more. So that's one aspect, right? You're seeing better margins, things like that. On the other side, you see somebody come in they've never used a repricing software. They're like, I don't even reprice manually. I list it and move on. And they're like, yeah, I'm not growing as fast as I thought I would. I'm like, yeah, checks out. Here's how you fix it. And so with some of them, it's just bringing them back into alignment with the market. The market's at 70. They're sitting at 82. The market's not going up there. So they're like, I'm just going to wait for it to come back. It's not how this works. You have to push it back up and you have to do that strategically. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So when they start seeing things move that's still profitable, all of a sudden you have the cash flow rotating, right? You have this thing where you start to learn sourcing, you buy, you get decent at it, good enough, and then you run out of capital, and now you're just waiting for that capital to get sold, that inventory sold through, capital gets replenished, let's complete the cycle. A lot of sellers on the newer side seem to get stuck at that replenish side, so on the sales side. Once we can fix that for them, now cash flow is rotating, and now we can start having conversations around how long is your capital sitting there, right? So e-commerce brands look at this. They look at how long is my inventory sitting before it's actually sold, because there's a sweet spot. You want to hold too long. You don't want to hold too short, because now your POs, like you can run out of stock. It's super risky. When we get them back in that healthy zone, and every seller is kind of different depending on how much capital they have and stuff like that. So there's no right answer to like how long you should hold. I have general best practices that I've seen work well. If you're going from holding inventory 6 to 8 weeks down to 3 to 4 weeks, your capital or your cash flow cycle makes all the difference in terms of how fast you can scale. As your capital is sitting stagnant, you're not scaling fast. It's going to take you 10 times in some cases as long to get to a higher revenue level because we're cash intensive businesses, right? Like you have to spend money to make money here. So it is how fast can I redeploy my capital, get a profitable return on that, and do it again? You can do that too fast. I've seen that happen. Sometimes it makes sense, not a lot of times. And most sellers are sitting on the inverse end of that spectrum. They're holding things too long because they have this approach that it's called flipping. That's what I'm doing. I'm just going to buy some stuff. I'm going to hold till I make good money. Then something finally clicks and they go, oh, yes, I am flipping inventory, but that's not necessarily the game I'm playing. I'm really playing e-com, and sales velocity and stuff like that matters from a cash flow perspective. And if I want to scale rapidly, I need that capital churning. And so by getting them early, having them experience that cycle, get created and corrected, should I say, they're able to scale faster, if that makes sense. And it starts to make sense. And I think because you can see it happen and you can experience it, your behaviors change faster than just being told to do that. I'm that person. You can tell me all day long, this is how you do it. I go, cool. You got to show me. I'm a hands-on guy. If I experience it, if I see it, if I feel it, it will stick. If I read a blog post, I go, conceptually, that makes sense. I don't know if it's true because I haven't experienced it. And again, for new sellers, there's a lot of fear. You don't want to mess things up. You don't know if that's actually true or not true. You have no experience to be able to call BS on certain things. So your natural inclination is to be hesitant. And so when we can get them in, we can onboard them, we can walk them through our thought process, set up the account, have them experience it for a week. They're like, oh, this makes sense. So it's a foundational shift across the board.
Yeah, I can't help but think I'm envisioning all the talking off the ledge that has to be done in the scenario.
Sometimes, yeah.
Because you presented the person camped out at 82 that needs to move to 70. So that's going to be alarm bells. And then the person who just wants to undercut, you move them up and you slow their velocity, and to have that conversation to get them to realize, no, this is going to make you more money.
Yes.
It's got to be a tough conversation, but frequent.
It is. And I've done a lot of optimization calls myself with our users, and I'm immediately trying to understand where on that spectrum are they over indexed on. And then I have to psychologically understand why that's the case. And if there's any friction for what I'm about to say, I will deal with that first. So again, I'm going back to sales, and then I can help them understand, yes, this is good. This is also good. Sometimes let's bring you back into balance because right now you are out of balance. And when we do that correctly, you will see things improve that you're not expecting to improve. And I always say, listen, if there's hesitation, let's run it 3 days. You email me, you can be like, hey, revert it. I'll do it for you. It's fine. Give me 3 days of just getting you back into balance. And every single time I get an email, don't change it back. We are good. Holy crap. And sometimes it is. Listen, if you come to me and say, Dillon, I want more sales, so a higher volume of sales and more profit margin, I'm usually going to say, sounds lovely. It's not how this works. Not at an individual SKU level. We can do that account level by basically looking at age of inventory, right? We can say sometimes we're going to go a little bit slower and maximize profit margin. Other times we're going to focus on sales velocity over profit margin. These two things oppose one another. So you can do both, but you want to think about it in phases. It's not like I can get both at the same time on the exact same SKU. Rarely does that happen. Can you sometimes? Sure, of course. More of an edge case from what I've noticed, but yeah, it's getting people to, there's a lot of preconceived notions. There's a lot of assumptions that are very strongly held. And so I have to whittle them back a little bit and just say, okay, let's try it. I've given you my explanation. You understand how we're going to achieve that goal. Here's what we're going to do. And every single time we're good. So sometimes I'm taking somebody who is a little too slow on the velocity side. They're like, yeah, but my profit margin's insane. I'm like, yeah, but your inventory is sitting for like 3 months for no reason. And I'll tell them based on what I'm seeing, I can look at a dashboard and set expectations. Say, okay, I would probably assume you're going to have a pullback on your ROI, 10 to 15% tops. I anticipate your sales velocity to go up 20 to 40%, somewhere in that range. So again, you are trading something. I'm not just taking ROI away for no reason. I am introducing something more important in some cases, which is we're getting cash flow coming back. Sometimes it's the inverse. I'm like, dude, you're way too aggressive for no reason. Slow it down. And people love those conversations because they're like, oh, cool, my ROI will go up. I'm like, yeah, you're going to sell less, but at a higher ROI. And that's not a bad thing. You were overselling when you didn't need to, but it's the inverse ones that are difficult. But sometimes it's a harder conversation because I need to look at what is their actual ROI today before we make changes. And sometimes it's too tight. And I say, listen, we can do this. I don't think it's going to be as advantageous for you as I would have hoped. You're buying inventory with not enough margin. You have a sourcing problem. It's very easy to see. I can look at what you're doing, how you're repricing, all that stuff, look at all the products, look at the averages, and basically tell you that you have a sourcing problem. And so there are cases where I'm like, hey, I don't feel comfortable making that change for you. You can do whatever you want. It's your account. I do not feel comfortable doing it. Here's why. I think first and foremost, you need to reassess how you source, how you buy, improve that, and then everything downstream will improve. Again, I said this before, you make your money when you buy the product. You're buying your margin. So if you're not buying enough margin, there's only so much we can do. Rare does happen. And that's usually very new sellers that think I've been buying at 30%. So my ROI should be 30%. It's not how this works, unfortunately. I wish it was that straightforward. It sounds nice in an ad, but the reality is you're actually getting around 15%. And that's, for me, on OA, too tight. I like to see anywhere from 30 to 60% actual ROI on OA. That's a nice sweet spot. That's enough where, and that's post-optimize, or that's pre-optimization. That lets me know, okay, if you're at 60 and what we change pulls you down to 50%, but you're selling through in a healthier way. Not faster is not always better, right? There's always a sweet spot. But if I can get you back into that balance and drop you from 60% to 50%, not on everything, just as an aggregate, that will improve your cash flow problems faster than anything else. And usually when I'm jumping into those optimization calls, there's a few questions, right? What's your biggest problem right now? And I can immediately look at the account and be like, let me guess, cash flow and capital are your biggest problems. Yep. Okay, here's how we're going to fix it. You're going to trade something for it. But again, it's not getting rid of something. It is not removing something. It is a trade. And so when you put a seller back into balance, either way, everything else just improves and everything else is simpler, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
You mentioned recently on Twitter that you can't keep up with AI progress anymore, which I clutched my pearls a bit because if there's someone who keeps their finger on the pulse, it was you.
Yeah.
And you've got your hands on AI all the time. It's in your repricing tool.
Yeah.
Where do you see the biggest breakthroughs in AI that will actually have an impact on Amazon sellers?
Yes. Let me clarify my statement. I can see everything coming. I don't have enough time to play with it. Like Claude bot, now OpenClaw, is a prime example. I've not had time to just set it up and play with it. I've got a Mac Mini sitting right here that runs servers and stuff. I could throw it on and have fun. I've always said this, it's an exponential curve. We're going to hit a point where things are changing so fast, you cannot keep up. I just finally hit that in the past few weeks. 2026 has felt like 6 months already. It's only going to get faster. I think that's a good thing. Personally, I'm very excited, but it's also so overwhelming. We are finally, it makes me so happy because I've made predictions and I know I sound insane. Then some sellers, oh, here's how I'm using this for that. I'm like, see, I said it 6 months ago. I said 6 to 12 months. It's probably going to start happening. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to start to happen. Saul, great example, right? When Claude Cowork came out, he started playing with it and showing what he was doing. I was like, and there it is. There's my proof. How is this going to change for sellers? There's a lot you can do now, and I want to focus on that. There is a lot that's coming as well. What you can do now, and I think this is so incredible. I've always said sellers are drowning in data, but they can't utilize it. It's a lot of raw data. You're not a data analyst. I'm not. I love spreadsheets. Don't love them that much. You can now, if you download Claude desktop, so Anthropic makes Claude, you download it. There's chat and then there's code. So there's regular chat like you're used to. There's Claude Code, which is awesome. Claude desktop now has something called Cowork. And so it runs locally. You hook it up to a folder on your desktop. So it has access to those files. You can give it system prompts. It can create documentation for you. It can edit files, everything. You can now dump all the raw data that you have that you've always been curious about into a folder locally, hook up Claude Cowork to that, and start asking real questions. And you can do this across the board. Get really granular, get really high level, right? So I dumped it Marketplace Pulses report, a bunch of other research I had. I was like, where's our industry going? What's happening? And now I can have deep conversations with the data itself and various forms of data to create my own opinion. That's why I have a contrarian opinion that I think actually this is great. Because if you look at that report, very high level, it looks horrendous. If you look at it the right way, it's actually not, right? But that takes time. So you can now dump things like your raw sales data and be like, really, what should I be focusing on? What categories do well? What categories look to do well that really don't? And tell me why. And create charts, create visuals. Tell me these things. You're now at a point where you can get incredibly granular visibility into a lot of things, and you can make better, more strategic decisions faster. This was not possible before. Now, could you upload a file, a CSV to chat? Yes, of course you could do that. Was it great? No. 1,000%. It hurts my heart when somebody's like, oh, I uploaded these 15 CSV files and I'm chatting with it in chat. It's not how that works. It's hallucinating and it's losing data. And I promise you, it is leading you astray. That is now no longer happening. They just updated to the new Opus 4.6, which is one of their models, their bigger models. The context window went from 200,000 tokens, and a context window is just, it's memory for the conversation, right? So if you chat long enough in a thread, it goes, I can't remember anything, so we're done. And you lose all that, which very painful. Now it's up to 1 million. So the model got more intelligent, and it went from 200,000, let's call it memory, to 1 million. So now we can have longer, more detailed conversations. So we can do some fun stuff. So I think if you're not doing that already, that's where you start. I'm already having sellers reach out and be like, hey, can we do like a one-on-one, like AI catch-up session? And this is where I'm going to have them start. You don't need to worry about prompt engineering as much. You need to over communicate, be very clear. It's basic communication. We don't need to call it prompt engineering. It's just good communication that's clear. And you need to be able to converse with documentation, with files, with data. And if you do that alone, you're in a good spot. Now, we are also getting to a point where AIs are controlling browsers really well and controlling operating systems really well. Claude Cowork, you can toggle this on for Chrome. So you can say, hey, don't use your web scraping tool, use Chrome. Go log into my accounts. You don't have to pull the data anymore. You can write prompts that explain exactly the process to complete a task in a software. And you could say, hey, go do that for me. I'm already logged in. And you can watch it. It'll pull up Chrome, go to the website. You're already authenticated and logged in. It goes, boom, okay, that's done. You're good. So now we're there. Is it perfect? No. Is it really better than what it was a month ago? Yeah, by a long shot. And now we have this Claude bot, OpenClaw. They've had 3 different names at this point. I think they finally settled on OpenClaw. You are running this on an operating system. So it can control your files. It can log into the browser. It can do whatever you need it to do. I've publicly stated, I don't think most sellers need to jump into that world quite yet. There's a lot of security problems. It is not perfect. I think it is slightly overhyped. It is really cool from what I've seen. It can mess things up. So would I use that inside of our company? No, it's too risky. Would I do certain things? Yes. I mean, I do those things, but we are at a point where your SOP and your processes can now, to a degree, be given to an AI, and it can complete them for you if written correctly. So I've publicly stated, I don't think VAs will last a few more years in our space. And now we're seeing the early versions of that. So can I keep up with everything? No, it's changing rapidly. People are pulling different principles and concepts from across AI and combining them in incredibly insane ways. And I love it. And as much as I like that intellectually, and I'm curious and I'm a geek and it's really cool, I first and foremost look at the practicality. Does it actually save me time? Does it actually improve me in some way, shape, or form? That's what I really care about. I'm more personally excited about Howie.ai than I am this Claude bot thing right now, because I schedule a lot of meetings and it's awesome. It's $15 a month and it's just a little email agent that schedules meetings for me. I'm more excited about that because it's practical and it exists and it works. So I think that's one aspect. As these browser controllers get better, I think it's not a crazy idea to say you will be able to set up an agent that can actually control the browser, that can source away for you if you can give it the right guardrails and processes, so the actual steps of how you do it, and it could replicate it for you. So another big metric people are looking at is the average time an AI agent can work without a human in the loop. Codex, which is OpenAI's coding thing, just hit a record for 6.6 hours. Beautiful task. It knows exactly what it needs to get done. You say go, and it goes for 6 hours, and it comes back and goes, all right, that's now done. I built that entire software for you, or whatever it is. So that's one of the reasons why you could not use AI for sourcing previously. It couldn't run long enough. It's a time-consuming thing, right? It's not necessarily just going to overnight fundamentally do it differently and better than you and like it's perfect. That's not how this works. It's going to start with what you teach it, what you give it, guidelines, guardrails, all those things. But it needs to be able to run long enough to do it because it will be slower than you. But the upside is you're not the one doing it. So even if it is taking 4 times as long as you, does it matter? Fire it off, go to bed, wake up to leads. So we're getting to that place now. And we're already seeing the early versions of that with some sellers testing. I'm personally not a big fan of the MCP tool calling stuff. I think it's a band-aid personally. I would much rather have an AI that can operate like a human in the browser because now it's not limited based on the functionality of the tool that was created for me. Now it can click any buttons, it can navigate however it wants to, it can explore, save notes to itself. And this is the cool part. We are now getting to a place where AIs have memory and they can self-learn. We're not fully there, but we're already seeing early examples of this where they make a mistake and they go, oh, let me remember not to do that next time. So the first time you run it, not perfect. Just like the first time you sourced, not perfect, but you do it long enough, you learn long enough, you get pretty good at it. And so I think we get to that place. I give it 3 to 6. I want to say 6 to 8, but we're moving so fast now. It's probably 3 to 6 months. I think we get to a place where you can do that. Not again, I'm never going to say perfectly. I think you get to a place where you can do that. And that is a real option that sellers start to consider. So when it comes to using AI as a seller, it's everywhere. You know what I mean? It's simple things like helping you create documentation. Hey, here's a video of me doing this task. Break it down and write the SOP for me. So I can give to my VA or I can give to, I can use it myself. I can give it to another agent once they get good enough to do that particular task. It is brainstorming. I think this is the most underrated thing. I brainstorm left and right with AI, but I have data involved and I'm giving it guardrails in terms of here's the context. Here's how I'm thinking about it. What are things that I should be aware of that we haven't talked about that I should? That's vastly more important than I ever realized. And it goes, here's 3 terms you've never mentioned to me. And here's why they're important. So it can get you up to speed on things really fast. We mentioned being a new seller is like drinking from a fire hose. How do you fix that? You learn things as you need to, but also you can remove your blind spots. If you don't know a term exists, you can't search it and learn it. You have to stumble upon it. AI is pretty good at doing that kind of stuff. And so I probably talk to more AI systems than I do humans during the day. I was joking the other day because I have dual monitors. I had 4 windows. Each one was a different AI, and I was talking about something completely different with each one. It's absolutely incredible. Getting into a new business. Hey, what are the books I should read on this? What terms do I need to know and why are they important? Here's a situation that I'm having that I'm not sure what's the right move here because I'm hesitant. Okay, tell me what data you need from this software that would help you help me. And it goes, okay, I researched, I need these 3 exports. Okay, here's those 3 exports. What should I do? Where should I prioritize my time? What would actually move the needle? Here's 15 things you could do. Here's 3 that would actually move the needle in theory. So why don't you focus there? Okay, can you help me actually do it? Sure, I'll do it with you. I did this the other day. I was updating a lot of our SEO stuff. So Backlinko is like the go-to for anything SEO that you want to learn. So I literally had it use Chrome. I said, here's all the links I want you to learn. Go take it, take notes, store those notes as markdown files. This is using Claude Cowork. So I had it go learn it. And then I said, cool, we're going to start updating some content. And I want you to apply what you learned and tell me why. Was it perfect? No. I called it a few times and not being lazy. I was like, hey, triple check yourself on that one. There's, oh, you're right. So you still have to be in the loop a little bit there, and worked flawlessly. And that would have taken me 3 weeks. It took me 3 days. So you can move faster.
So I'm no Luddite, but the speed makes me feel like I'm a caveman just banging some rocks together.
Yeah.
Where should one pay attention to get a little bit of signal through the noise so that they can, they don't necessarily need to be on the cutting edge, but make sure that I'm not falling so far behind that I am going to go back to being wondrous about fire?
Yeah. We might all become Amish at some point. Let's be honest. Yeah, I think X is probably my favorite place because it's where everything's happening right now with AI, things getting launched. So you will find out weeks, if not months later, on any other platform.
Yeah.
Um,
LinkedIn is just finding out about, they're
yeah,
still calling it Claude bot probably.
exactly. Right. So don't start there. YouTube is good, but you got to find the right channels. The hard part there is, again, everything is overly hyped. And you might miss something that is blatantly being overly hyped that actually is valuable. They were just being too sensational, or the inverse happens, right? Like I look at anything that has hardware as completely fake. Anything AI hardware that you see as a demo is not a real demo. They will say, oh, here's us demoing this. And it's all fake every single time. It has been, it will continue to be for the longest time, unless it is somebody reviewing the actual hardware shipped. Consider that fake and not possible today. Because if it was, they would have actually done it and shipped it. So that's one aspect. I am now at the point where I will wait. I used to jump immediately, find out about a new thing, jump in, have fun, and you get burned a lot, right? Because these companies are raising tons of money. We're talking billions of dollars in some cases. So they have the budget to hype. The product's not really where they say it is in the demos and all that stuff. Same thing with the hardware. But I wait to see somebody actually use it and talk about it, because then you get a better understanding of, okay, 60% of this is true and good, but which 60? And does that really help me with anything? And if not, you move on. So I used to just jump in and play around. Now I don't have the time to do that because so many things are coming. Now I just wait and I look at the discourse, right? So Claudebot's a great example. Everybody's overly hyping it. Oh, we just officially entered the singularity, but this is going to usher in insane things. Oh, here's how I'm using 10 Claude bots to run a legitimately sustainable company. And then you read the X article and they're not actually doing that. They're just talking pie in the sky theory. So it's like crap. So you can pick up patterns quickly. If people are overly saying this thing is going to change the world, it's not. It's moving fast. It ain't moving that fast. It's still fast. So even 2 days after the Claude bot thing, I was hyped. I was like, oh, this is a really cool concept. I really like the architecture here. There's a lot of cool stuff that they're doing. People started to say, it is nice, but it's not that nice. And here's some issues with it. It fails sometimes. Security is a major problem. And then you start to say, okay, if it's not perfect and people are saying they're doing these insane things, what's more likely to be true? And it's more likely to be true that it is really cool and is really helpful in some ways, but it is not the thing that will fundamentally change your life or your company. I think that's more or less my mental model at this point. I used to be the inverse. I'll be like, oh, this is totally going to fundamentally change everything. It's like, no, it improves something and it's nice. It didn't fundamentally change my life or the company. It just reduced friction somewhere or improved me somewhere else. Again, that's also going to change, right? Like we're going to get to a point where it is going to be true that it foundationally changes something. I care a little bit more about the models themselves these days because the models are getting really good. The upside is that some of the demos you're seeing using AI on the software side do not work today. But when the models get slightly better, they will overnight work beautifully. So you still need to be aware of them. 11X is a great example. They build AI SDRs and BDRs for sales. Everybody knows they suck. How are they still raising money? Because the pitch is we have the architecture, we have the foundations laid. The limiting factor right now is the intelligence of the models. Look at how fast new models are coming out. It might take 6 months until the model gets good enough for this to overnight just work. And all we have to do is change one line of code to the new model from the current one, and then it works. So they can keep raising money because that's not necessarily untrue as a statement. There's things that exact same prompt. I saved prompts, didn't work 2 months ago, works stupidly well now to the degree that it's scary, like one-shotting everything. So that is true. So I look at what am I actually doing in reality and what can help me either do that better or do it for me. I always start there. Listen, I'm a nerd. I like everything, right? I try to play with everything, but fundamentally as a business owner, as a seller, it's what's going to help, right? Should you care about self-driving vehicles and robots? Not as much, to be honest. I talk about them because I'm like, hey, I think prep centers and fulfillment centers are going to use humanoid robots at some point. And I think You should be aware of that to see where the puck is going. Does it change how you operate your business right now? No. Is it going to in 6 months? No. 24 months? Maybe. So it's like just being aware of what is happening, just keeping a pulse on things. And you will have people that are overly invested in a particular platform, and they will tell you it can do anything you want. It's not true. It's done everything that they've wanted, but they've only wanted 3 things, and it's relatively simplistic. But in their brain, it did everything. So you might come in with incredibly high expectations like I would, and then immediately be let down. You can do some cool stuff. I've done some cool stuff in Lindy.ai, but I don't need that task anymore, so I don't run it. Why am I going to run something that provides no value anymore? Like it did at the time, doesn't now. I'm good. I'm going to move on. I think there's also a big push for adding AI everywhere. You don't always need that, right? Like I've always said this, you have to be effective before you're efficient. I think that's also true when you're introducing AI, right? So if I'm giving AI a process, yes, it can do it for me in the background using my own browser. If I really want to get true value from all of that, I would also want it to say, hey, like, how do we make the process itself better? And a lot of people miss that step. They go, oh, it just does it for me. I'm like, yeah, but have you watched it do it? Because it did 15 redundant things for no reason. And there is a cost here, right? And that it's not a true cost like you're using the API. You pay each time you hit it, but you're running out of tokens. And there's nothing more frustrating than being in a good flow state with an AI and they go, hey, you're blocked until 7 p.m. tonight and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And you're like, I guess I'm done. Nobody wants to do that. So you do need to be a little selfish with your tokens. But yeah, it's so funny because all the foundational stuff I've talked about for the last decade plus are still applicable to this day. But I think they're more valuable now. Like processes are more valuable now because there is not the friction of I have to go hire and train a VA, and that's expensive relative to an AI at least. So like, why would I do that if I'm not planning on hiring a VA in the next 2 months? I'm not going to create all this documentation. That's a waste of my time. To now it is no, that is your gold. That is the moat, your data, your workflows, your processes, how you think, your mental models of how you make decisions now matter more than ever because you're now getting to a point where you can transfer that to an AI and it can replicate you in that way. It can help you make those same decisions, right? So if you're like, this is how I make this decision every time and it works beautifully, great. Write it down, clarify it, add context, everything. And then when it happens again, you go into an AI, you give it the prompt that has all that and you go, here's the situation, what should I do? And it goes, based on this, here's exactly what you should do. And you get comfortable with it. First time you're like, would I actually do it that way? Okay. Yeah, I would. So you start to build trust. You build trust. And it's not about removing yourself from thinking, right? We're not outsourcing our thinking, but what we're doing is we're making it more procedural, right? Because a lot of the things you think you're doing that are very strategic, very high, I got to think about it. Dude, you're doing the same process every time. Get the routine. So like we can do it faster. It doesn't need to take you 3 days to finally make that same daggum decision you would have made within 15 minutes. Just do it in 5 and move on. So you can move faster in a lot of ways. It's great for training too, right? You dump all that stuff. You have a new team member. They're going to pester you with questions, or they can pester the AI and be like, hey, like I got this situation. What should I do? And it goes, this is what we recommend doing. This is how we usually approach it. And they just go, okay, and move on. Again, AI is so difficult because you can use it in so many different ways. It's hard to say, where do you start? That's why I'm ranting here, because there is no single answer. If you want to be simplistic about it, go to chat if you don't do this already and just have conversations. Brain dump, vent, ask for feedback, ask for book recommendations. Whatever. I did this yesterday. I was like, hey, I got this random little niche subject. It's hard to find books on. Find me legit books on this subject. Goes, all right, here's 4. Great. I don't have to think about it anymore. And then I go to another AI and be like, hey, add that to my Amazon cart. And it goes, okay, it's great.
If sellers are obviously overwhelmed, a lot of them are.
Of course.
If they had to choose 1 or maybe 2 guys to try to get comfortable with, which 2 would you suggest right now?
I would recommend, there's a iPhone and Android moment happening right now between OpenAI and Anthropic. I personally, and I used to be an OpenAI fanboy, I believe that Anthropic is where you should start. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do there. They're pushing out updates that are practical. So don't even worry about which model you're using in your conversation. Default to Opus, whichever one's there. It's the biggest one. It's highly intelligent. It's fine. Start with that because you can have it on your phone. If you want to have quick chats, you can have it on your desktop. If you want to use that co-work thing we're talking about, there's also projects. I've used this. Co-work is replacing projects, but I think they're still valuable. So I would start there first. And then if you want to really feel something different, try Poke by Interaction. So it's called the Interaction Company. There is no application. You text it. The entire onboarding is via text. It's going to be sassy. I'll tell you that right now. It's hilarious. You get to barter with the pricing and it will call you out. If you're like, give me something super cheap, it'll be like, bro, I know what you do for a living. Like, you can't afford this. It's a fun interaction, but it is really nice because I use it for simple things. Hey, remind me tomorrow at 10 a.m. to do this thing. And it goes, okay. And it just texts me. It's simple, right? But also, I don't have my email open 24/7. But if an important, urgent email comes to my inbox, I get a text that says, hey, asking about this, and it seems urgent. Here's a link to it. And I can even just say, hey, actually, it's not that urgent. Here's what I would send. And I'd be like, hey, write the email. Here's the context. Fire it off for me. I can do that all on my phone. So I think Anthropic Claude is going to be your workhorse for real productivity. I think Poke is a good counterpart that will show you where things are going from how you interact with AIs, because Poke has done things that I have felt like I was talking to a human and it was weird in a cool way. And so you can see where things are going. And people are doing fun stuff. I think Claudebot is very much built on the bones of what Poke is, because you can give it skills. You can do all kinds of cool stuff. Like, I suck at remembering birthdays. So I wrote out a list of everybody's birthday. I gave it to Poke. I said, remind me on those days. And it goes, okay. I was like, every year it goes, okay. And funny enough, 2 days later, it was my sister's birthday. It goes, hey, by the way, it's your sister's birthday. I was like, oh, perfect. Happy birthday. So I think Poke is really good for like your personal life. I think it's really cool. Use it as a task manager, whatever. I'll be like, I'll brain dump. Here's all the crap I need to get done at the house today. Help me sequence it. I got ADD. My activation energy is not where I would like it to be at. So break it down. So I'm not looking at this list of 10 things I got to do. Just hold me accountable to the next most impactful one and optimize the sequence. So I'm not having to do this for 5 hours. I can do it in 2. And I just go, hey, that's done now. And it'll be like, oh, hey, you started the laundry and then switch over here. That's probably ready. Is it ready? I'm like, oh yeah, actually it is. All right, switch it. Okay, cool. It's like those little basic things, right? When you're neurodivergent like I am, those things start to matter a lot and they help a ton. I moved up to Massachusetts, so I had to update my driver's license. Didn't want to because it's not a fun experience. So I text Poke. Here's what I got to do. Here's my details. What do they need from me? And he goes, here's the 4 documents you need. I go, okay. I got all those. I go, I don't want to just show up and waste a bunch of time sitting in lines. He goes, oh no, you can actually schedule an appointment. There's one this Thursday. The next one's actually 2 weeks out. You should probably do it now. Okay. Where do I do it? Here's a link. Right. So I schedule it 2 days before. I walk in. Hey, here's what I'm here for. The lady reaches over for a packet because you need to fill all these out, and I just hold mine up. She goes, oh, never mind. You're good. Jump in. 20 minutes later, I walked out with a fresh idea.
Nice.
Yeah, could I have done that myself? Of course. Did I? No, because I didn't want to. So Poke, really fun on the personal side. Claude is going to be your workhorse. You can use it for all kinds of incredible things. Simple chats up to managing projects, up to learning new skill sets, up to understanding your business better than you ever thought possible and making some of the most needle moving decisions you've never thought of.
Can't let you get away without giving you your flowers. 2 years ago, you were on the show and you predicted AI agents actually sourcing for you. You said 2 to 3 years, 2 years ago. And then you just said, conservatively, you said 6 to 8. So you haven't even revised that prediction. So
no
credit there. Hey, and before we get off, I've got more seller questions, but before we get off the AI and specifically the predictions, I think if you ran a simulation on historical similar breakthroughs, maybe technological or industrial, probably most of the simulations would come back with some sort of consolidation of power. What do you, and then I'm asking this because, and I'm not being a wet blanket.
No, you're good.
AI bubble or whatever, but they are gatekeeping revenue from actual users. And a lot of people are making assumptions that there's a bigger gap than we realize because they are collecting massive amounts of cash, right? And it's tough to picture that the revenue is balancing. So what do you see? Is there a power consolidation? What do you think that looks like? And what are we in the end going to have to pay? Is it everybody spending $500 a month on the main thing?
No.
What does it look like when the dust settles?
So here's what's happening. It is incredibly cheap for the amount of compute, inference, and intelligence we have access to now for $200. For $100, even better. People are like, oh, I'm having to pay for all these things. I'm like, no, you get to. You don't have to. You get to. And trust me, it should cost more. It is subsidized. Keep in mind, these companies, yes, their revenues are tens of billions of dollars. They are raising, in some cases, hundreds of billions. It is being subsidized to keep improving. In terms of consolidation of power, I don't have that fear because there is a concern that once one company hits it the right way, we get AGI, artificial general intelligence, which I think we kind of super intelligence, whatever you want to call it. They will control everything. No. And my reason for saying that is open source models are roughly 3 to 6 months behind. So open source is you just download the code and run it on your computer and you have it and it didn't cost you a dime. Now, you can use open source models today. Does it have all the bells and whistles that really make it great? No. Could somebody build that? Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a harness, right? It's just a front end structured the right way. Like you take one model like Opus 4.6, you can use chat and just basic conversations with it. You can use it to code over in Claude Code. It's the same model with different kind of guidelines and contexts and user or system prompts and stuff like that. But fundamentally, it's the same model. So I'm not really worried about that. Where does the dust settle? This is where I get really frustrated. And I think I posted about it today. It might have been yesterday. Everybody is scrambling on theories for how this plays out. Nobody has a clue. Anybody who confidently says this is exactly how it's going to play out has no clue. Nobody knows. This is new. Listen, we can look at Industrial Revolution. We can look at horse and buggies. We can look at previous technological innovations and be like, this is what happened. Sure, this is different. I think we can all agree. The internet was profound. This is different than that.
More profound, you mean?
More profound. Absolutely more profound. Like we've never experienced this level of a technological innovation ever. There are people talking about post-labor economics. That's one facet that people are talking about of, okay, if AIs can do all the intellectual work and we have robots, humanoids that can do all the physical work, what is left for humans? And I think that's a great question to ask if that's how it plays out. I'm not fully sold that it will. We are seeing job losses for sure. It's not always what the headline says. In some cases, it's we're just not hiring more people. So they go, that's job losses because they expected to hire 160,000 and then they're now saying they're not. But they didn't let people go. So what's happening? You can now take one human and they can do the work of 3 to 5 other humans with AI together. So AI by itself, decent. Human by itself, decent. Human plus AI together, insane. It's hard to beat right now. That's going to change, of course. We don't know. And I think that's why it's scary, right? Listen, I'm an optimistic kind of guy, but I think it's way too early to have a strong opinion that it is going to go to a Star Trek utopian society or a dystopian war games thing. You know what I mean? Like you don't know. And I'm of the opinion it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's one end of the extremes. I think it's always going to be somewhere in the middle, give or take. So I do think at a certain point, you're going to want to spend $5,000 a month on AI because it would be the equivalent of spending $50,000 a month on humans. This is the important part. It is not just like costs money. Of course it does. What's the equivalent though? The equivalent is a human or not doing it. Let's assume you're going to do it. So a human, any tech company, you're going to pay about 10K plus per month for a human, no matter what they're doing. You got benefits on top of that. So add 10% on top of that. You got options, you got all the things. But if you can pay $5,000 a month to have 5 of those, no benefits, all those things, that's a different story. So I think from a business owner perspective, you're going to want to, because the ROI on that is going to be stupidly high if utilized correctly. And I think that's the point that a lot of people miss. I'm not in favor of letting humans go. I've told my team that's not happening here. I want you to use AI. I want you to, right? We're not going to be Luddites and not use it, but I'm not looking to replace you. I'm looking to free you up so you can do other things. So if you can find an AI system, an agent, whatever that can replace your entire existence in this company tomorrow, do it. Promise you there's more stuff to get done here. So you're not gone. So I think teams are just going to be smaller. You're just not going to need as many people. I think brand new businesses that are software, tech, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think eventually you get to a point where it's one founder, maybe 2, and 100 some agents and they crush it. I think that does start to happen. But again, no idea. Hard to say.
That's fair. I'm going to shift back to Amazon a little bit. You recently tweeted that the absolute worst business model for Amazon is switching business models.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, this is the shiny object syndrome problem. And what I was really trying to get at with that is I've been in the space long enough to see how people behave, and somebody will try OA, not immediately succeed and be taking home 10K a month and be like, oh, this doesn't work. But I see somebody posting about RA and they're crushing it. So I'm going to go do that. Rinse and repeat. So every time I hear somebody say X is dead, right? RA is dead. OA is dead. Wholesale is dead. Private label is dead. I go, I can point to 5 people in each one of those models that are doing millions and millions of dollars a month in sales. So that's obviously not true. Again, it's different. But I think no matter which model you pick, you can make money, but you have to stick with it. You have to, again, take it seriously. You have to learn. You have to fail. You have to make mistakes. And it takes time. People are so impatient. I'm that way too. So I'm preaching to myself, right? I've always said, pick a model that gets you excited and ideally fits your personality. If you can't talk to people on the phone, don't go to wholesale. If you're really analytical and like love crushing a keyboard, go OA. Like you're going to crush it over somebody who has a different skill set and personality than you do. Think about it, but commit a year to it. A year is not really a lot of time. When we started the software company, we said we're going to commit at minimum 10 years to this because we knew so many things we did not know. And there's even more that we didn't know. So sometimes it just takes time. And so when I see somebody or I talk to a seller that's, oh yeah, start with RA, didn't love it, went to this, didn't love it, went to this, didn't love it, I'm trying this now. I'm like, that's not the problem. The problem is you're starting from scratch every 2 months, thinking the model that you pick is going to be the thing that makes you successful finally. And that's not true. You can succeed in a lot of things, but it's consistency. It is giving it time, being patient. It is learning. It is reviewing how you're going about doing it, understanding where your gaps are, understanding where you fall short, and then go in and attacking that with knowledge. If you can get to that place as a seller who is jumping around too much, you will then start to succeed. It is never the model that makes you successful or not. It is the operator. It is the individual who is running it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I happened to see something today, a guy who was a wholesale seller just absolutely dumping on people pushing their 60s and being cart pushers. And I look at people that I know who, are doing high 7 and even 8 figures in retail arbitrage, being those cart pushers. And how dare you look down on somebody like that when they obviously are running a very solid business.
100%.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right. And I went and had Claude co-work pull all of it for the past year, as well as all of your replies to be able to come up with some of the content for today. You talked recently about the hard parts of Amazon selling aren't like sourcing and creating shipments. That is a solved game.
Yeah.
You said it's consistency, it's not giving up, it's learning as you go. And so I want to do a little thought exercise.
Yeah.
For the seller who's hit a plateau and they feel like they're grinding their gears, but they're not, what does consistency actually look like operationally?
It's a few things. It is not finding yourself in the trap of going heads down, sourcing a ton, and then not doing it for 3 weeks because you think you already did the task and that's it. And then having to start back over. I'd rather you do it daily. I'd rather you set a routine. Consistency is also can be its own trap, right? What you are doing if you are plateauing got you to where you are at. What you need to be doing to get to the next level is different. And so sometimes being consistent means taking a step back, reanalyzing it, and adjusting what you're being consistent with. I find, and it's not super obvious, but if you pay attention to how some sellers talk, they are inconsistent in that they know how to do the work. They do it, but they go really hard for 2 days and then they stop. And then they go, crap, I'm running out of inventory. And then they do go really hard and they stop and they rinse and repeat. And so they're not realizing they're stuck in this same problem loop when they could avoid all that and not work as hard if they just did it more consistently throughout. And sometimes also consistency, by the way, is not just the work that pays the bills. It's the work that supports the work. right? So if you're like, I'm doing the same stuff and getting the same results, what's happening? Consistency, right? So if you're gonna keep doing the exact same things and then expect a different result, that's insanity. So consistency matters, but what you are consistent with, I think, matters just as much. And I didn't put that into that tweet because I was trying to be catchy. But I do think that a lot of sellers are not setting routines, are not even being consistent and trying to solve the same problem. It might be like, tried to solve that, but I couldn't, so I moved on. That's not how this works. You try it one way, didn't work, be consistent. Try it a different way. Did it work? No. Okay, let's do it again. We're going to go until we solve this problem. And then now we're good. And so sometimes it is consistently trying to solve the same problem you've been dealing with instead of just letting it fade to the background and just accepting defeat on that. So I'm using consistency as a very broad term for what I think is a pattern a lot of sellers struggle with. They're not consistently sourcing the same way that they know works. They're not consistently looking at the same metrics and data to make informed decisions. They're not consistently sitting down for a set number of hours to source in the way that works, that allows them to buy more inventory and scale. They're not consistently looking at certain categories or whatever it makes sense, right? I'm using it very intentionally broadly. But when that clicks and you start to think through that mindset, you start to look at all the blind spots and the gaps in how you're operating the business. And I think this, again, is becoming more important moving forward with this operational excellency and all that kind of stuff that Amazon's kind of putting into place. You have to consistently be good at documenting your things, your invoices, whatever. You have to consistently do the things that does matter, that doesn't get you excited to get out of bed in the morning. Otherwise, you run the risk of slipping, making mistakes, getting a section 3, whatever. So when you're consistently doing the right things, you will consistently grow and do better. And unfortunately, I think that's a newer concept in our space that is being forced.
It's fair. Sounds like low agency. A lot
Yes.
of those examples
Yep.
not to use a buzzword, but you've always been a first principles thinker. I've heard you use that term multiple times. Can you give us an example of a widely held belief within the community, the Amazon seller community, that you think's dead wrong?
Yeah, 100%. Easiest one. Amazon makes a change. They hate Amazon sellers. It's all dying. Okay. I've said this for years, and it's now happening to developers because now they're charging for the API, right? So every developer is, oh, they hate us. Listen, do we have perfectly aligned incentives? No. Okay. As developers, as sellers with Amazon, no, that's not always the case. Most of the time it's not. However, the flip side of that is to ask the question, what incentives are they trying to put into place and why is it important? Why do I need to do things differently? What are they trying to solve for here? And then when you get to that answer, it then rationally makes sense. So instead of having this chip on your shoulder of Amazon hates sellers and blah, blah, blah. Listen, they do things that make being a seller difficult. We all know this. But when they start putting in things like, hey, we're going to raise long-term storage fees, people get upset. Okay, let's break it down. Why would they do that? What's the incentive? Okay, I imagine they don't want you to have inventory that sits there too long. Why wouldn't they want that? Okay, it costs money to own land and operate and all that stuff. And, there's an opportunity cost to have something sitting in a physical location that's not selling when we could have something that is selling fast, replace it. Does that rationally make sense if you ran that business? Yeah. Okay, so what would you do? You'd either say, we're going to auto send it back after a certain period of time, or if you want to keep it here, we'll let you, but we're going to charge you. It's going to have to make sense for us financially. Okay. So Amazon came out with SP API developer fees. They are outrageous. That's a fact. But then you have to pause, ask the questions, and okay, they haven't been charging for it. That's fair. The way Amazon works their teams is their teams actually pay to use Amazon software. So it costs them money as a team. At a certain point, those teams have to make their own money, kind of a thing. So in order to get more headcount for a team at Amazon, you need to prove that there's an ROI there. If it's only losing money, guess what? They're not going to get a bigger team. If it starts to make money or even offset the cost of running that team, it's easier for them to justify getting more team members on that, in that group, and then improve things. Okay. Does it suck? Yes. Can I understand why? Yeah. Do I see how that could go? You get more people working on the API itself, expanding functionality. Sure, I could totally see that. And I hope that is the case. Might take 2 years, right? Who knows? But then you look at how they're charging you for it and you go, okay, the incentive of using this type of call is outrageous. It's too expensive. Oh, but there's an alternative that doesn't do that. So they are giving you a path to not have to pay that, but you got to change something and the work's on you. They're not going to do it for you. Okay, I now understand the incentives and that's what we'll do. And so you unfortunately have software in our space that I know of that are just going to shut down. They're just like, the fees are outrageous. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm done. Did you take a look at it? Did you look at the documentation? Did you think about it? Or you just saw a number and said, absolutely not? Because I know what we would pay if we changed nothing. It's insane. But that's not the point. They're not saying you have to pay that. Don't change anything. They're saying, no, we want you to change things. And if you don't have to, but this is what it's going to have to cost for this to make sense for us to continue to support this. So you go from multiple 6 figures a month in cost to $1,000. You got to change. So again, adaptability, all these things, you really have to break it down. I like incentive models as a mental model for how to think through things. If somebody's doing something to you, ask why they would do it. Don't just immediately go to maliciousness. That's a fallacy. Sometimes it is true. Don't default to that. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. Don't just be like, oh, that guy's a bad person. You just go, they're more likely to be in a rush. They're probably stressed. They didn't mean to do that to me directly. It's fine. And it doesn't change anything, right? It's just your perspective. But a lot of times that ends up being true and you can have better decision making through that perspective where it's not we're just done because we can't afford that. That's insane. Or the whole Amazon software business is done. No, it's not. It's just going to be different. And like, we know exactly what to do. It's going to take time, which sucks. But again, just like I was saying for sellers, you either do it or you don't. Do you want to be in business or do you not want to be? I kind of like it. So we're going to do it. And again, people just see, and we did it too, right? You see the number they give you and you're like, there's no way that's physically possible. No way. And so you do have that freak out because it is scary. And then you're like, let's think about it. Let's look at the details, look at the documentation, all these things. You start to work on the problem and then you realize, oh, it's actually not that scary. And actually we can get it down in insane amounts, but then you have people on X, certain companies talking about how, oh, that's going to foundationally ruin everything. Everybody's going to have to raise prices an insane amount. And that's factually incorrect. They only have to do that if they don't do the thing they're supposed to do. And if they don't think about it, and if they don't do the work. So when you get down using first principles to the facts, you then know what to do and you understand why it's happening. Even if you disagree with it, right? Like it's been free this whole time. What are we doing? Only now you want to charge for this? Really? Can't change it. Not in your control, right? Control or not control. This is out of our control. So what do? Go to the facts, figure it out, understand it, make the right decisions, move on. Like it's, you know what I mean? So the things that sellers have experienced, developers are now experiencing, granted differently, but it's pretty big. And I'm watching other software founders react the exact same way that I've told sellers not to react, is look, understand, and then react. And I get it. It takes time. My initial reaction, holy crap. 4 hours later, okay, not nearly as bad as we thought. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, this is going to be so much more straightforward and not even remotely impactful. Like I've heard other software founders say, oh, you're going to get worse data. You're going to get updated data dramatically slower because of the way the cost structure is. It's actually not true. In some cases, we will do that because it's a nice little optimization, but you're talking every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes. So negligible, right? You're not talking going from 15 minutes to like once a day. Like it's such a negligible amount you're not even going to notice. And actually we're finding that it's going to improve the product doing all this work anyways. So we're like, hold on, it's a forcing function, right? Like we have to do it. But when you start to scope the project out, you're like, wait, it's also going to save us a ton of money on hosting and all this stuff because we're not going to be beating the crap out of our servers all the time because we don't need to anymore. And there's just different ways of going about doing things. And yeah, is it fun work? No. But when you come into it with that mindset, it makes you feel like a contrarian, but you're not in reality. You're just looking at the facts of what is happening. And you quickly realize everybody else is so prone to jump to conclusions. And even if you run basic analysis, yeah, I know how certain statements have been calculated because I've ran that same analysis, but the analysis itself had assumptions built in that were factually incorrect. And if you did a little bit more digging, you'd realize that's not.
I won't ask you to name any names, but
I won't.
do you think that those statements are a way to be able to be like, oh yeah, we're going to raise prices, or do you think it's just an engineering problem that they don't have the ability to solve, or is it both?
I was going to say, I think it's a bit of both. I think some will have to raise prices for sure. I think some will because you're going from the API is completely free to now it costs something, right? So yeah, charging nothing, you're going to have to you're going to have to charge something. I think going from $60 to $90 a month would tell me either that's not true and you did the work, but you're trying to get away with it, or you don't know what you're doing and you're not really solving the engineering problem. You're just offsetting it with price. So it also depends. It depends on how you use the API, like repricing software, stuff like that we're one of the highest consumers of the API. Like last 30 days, we updated 748 million prices in 30 days. So getting pretty daggum close to 1 billion price updates a month. So we use it pretty heavy. We're hitting it a few billion times. So some won't get hit at all. Like I know Keepa recently raised their prices and somebody's, oh, it's probably the developer fee. I was like, I don't think it is. Like they web scrape, dude. I think that was just good timing for them, but I don't think that's a forcing function for them. But again, I think, listen, if you're raising prices $5, $10, I think that's very justified. I think it is, especially for a smaller company. There is still a cost, right? It's not like you're going to get the cost of using the API down to zero. It's factually impossible now. So some might, and I think that's justified. I don't have a problem with that. I think if you're going from 30 to 60, 60 to 90, that's where I start, depending on the type of software it is, I tend to immediately assume you're probably just taking advantage of the situation and using that as a reason to raise your prices and pad your margins.
Interesting.
We'll see. But yeah, all scenarios are possible. We'll see. We're doing our best to have to not raise it by a penny. That's our goal, is do it in such a way that we don't have to change prices. If we have to raise them $2 to $3, I'm okay with that. If that's the delta there, like we do all this work and it's just, we got to do it just $2, $3, I'm okay with that. We're not going to jack it up $20, $30 per tier. That's outlandish. That's gouging is what it is.
Interesting. All right. I know we're coming up on 2 hours, or maybe have just passed 2 hours. I could talk for a day with you, but let's move to some rapid fire questions. You've already talked about Poke. You've talked about Claude.
Yep.
And of course, you can't use Aura as the answer. But what's one tool that you think every Amazon seller should be using right now outside of those three?
Outside of those three, I'm going through my list of apps right now to see what else comes to mind. I feel like I've started to consolidate. Here's a fun practical one that I do use. It's not the sexiest thing, but it's so practical. Every dot is the company. They build their own software using AI agents. They teach it. They talk about it. It's great. They have a Mac OS application called Sparkle. And all it does is it automatically organizes your files based on the title and the name of the file. So they create folders and everything. So if you're good about naming your files correctly, like your invoices and whatever, it'll just magically organize them for you. And you just dump it into documents or dump it into downloads, and within a minute where it should be. So like I will save things like personal taxes this year dash, and then the actual file name. And it'll catch that and be like, oh, I'm going to create a folder for Dillon's 2025 personal taxes. And I'll just dump everything there. It's a little one, but it's surprisingly great. Like when it goes off, like when I accidentally got logged out, I was like, why is my computer a complete mess right now? And then I just hit enable and it's perfect. That's a good one. And I went that one because we've talked about documentation and stuff like that, storing things, receipts, whatever. There's a lot of friction in not just storing them, but organizing them so that it's useful in the future. This is how you can just make it useful without you having to do the work, which is really fantastic.
Perfect.
What's one habit, this can be operational or personal, what's one habit that you built recently in the last, say, 2 years, you think gives you an unfair advantage as a founder?
Funny enough, I think it is keeping up with how things are changing. I'm in the company, the first one to bring up a lot of tools. I've been talking to my team about AI for 3 years. now we're all using it in every way, shape you can imagine. And now each person is like finding interesting ways of using their version of AI, whether that's coding, writing content, whatever. But I have this cool ability where, because I'm probably chronically online, that I will see something, be like, oh, that's really cool and useful for engineering, and just slack it over to James. And he's, oh, that's actually super sick. I was just dealing with this problem and it was driving me nuts yesterday. I'm like, cool, now it's solved. So like I can take in a lot of that stuff and understand, oh, is that actually useful or is that just interesting? Because I understand enough about each of the roles that we have in terms of the actual work to be like, oh, that actually would be beneficial, versus that's interesting intellectually, but it's not really practical quite yet. It might actually slow our team down. So I'm going to hold off on that. So I think for me, it is finding things that can speed our team up that is practical and useful.
What is a book, a blog post, or a podcast that you've consumed in the last 6 months that has had an impact on you or how you think?
There's, I forget who wrote it. It randomly came up. I've got it stored somewhere. Somebody wrote a blog post on high agency.
George Mack.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Described it,
Fantastic
clarified
post.
what it was, how to do it. And I thought it was so beautifully written that I threw it into a Claude project, and I will give it my problems. And I will say, how would a high agency person do it? How would they deal with this scenario or this problem? Like the blog post is so good, the AI can now just be like, here's exactly what you should do. And every time it's been dead on the money. So I think I'm reading a lot. I'm mainly reading fiction right now. I just wrapped up the Dan Brown series. So now I'm going into his other books. So I've been reading a lot more fiction lately at night to like relax my brain. But that blog post I felt had the most immediate impact. I started to just read it randomly because somebody linked it on X, and I was hooked. Could not put my phone down. It was that good.
I've shared that multiple times. And for those of you listening this far in, go to highagency.com.
Yes.
If you are listening this far in, this blog post is for you.
100%.
Simple one. If you could give one piece of advice to a seller, say they're doing 5,000-10,000 a month right now, but they want to get to 50. What advice do you give?
Go meet 3 sellers that are already accomplishing that. Explain how you operate and have them poke holes in it. Find the gap between what they are currently doing at their level and what you are currently doing at your level, and close the gap. That is the biggest hack. You don't have to recreate the wheel. You just need to find somebody who's already achieved it. And the reason why I say 3 people is you want to find the patterns. What are the things that each of them are doing consistently, and then adjust how you're spending your time, and you'll get there faster than you realize.
Beautiful. We always end with a quote for the podcast. I thought this one was up your alley. It's from Derek Sivers. Ideas are worth nothing unless executed. They are just a multiplier. Execution is worth millions. And if you haven't read anything from Derek Sivers, he's a great thinker.
You should.
Yeah. Dillon, it is, whenever you come on the show, I go away feeling like I've just been in the mental gym. And I appreciate that. It's not very often we have more than one quote on the show, but one of my favorite quotes is by Montaigne. And it's about how we're supposed to rub and polish our brains against those of others. And when you come on, I feel like that's what I get to do. And it's one of my favorites.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, man. For those of you who don't follow Dillon, go find him on Twitter. He's not hard to find. I think it's at Dillon_Carter.
Yes.
Go check out Aura. It is goaura.com. This will all be linked down in the show notes. Make sure you're following Dillon. If you want to give Aura a try, test it out, meet with their team, and figure out how to get it set up on your account the way that you want it to. All right. That's it for the show, guys. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.